Cigars and Sea Stories with Marine veteran Michael Penney. Coming to you next on episode 136 of Veteran on the Move.
Welcome to Veteran on the Move. If you're a veteran in transition, an entrepreneur wannabe, or someone still stuck in that JOB trying to escape, this podcast is dedicated to your success. And now, your host, Joe Crane.
Have you checked out the Veteran on the Move YouTube channel? In addition to listening to any podcast episode, you can join our live stream. I'm starting a new project soon, and you can watch us live on YouTube as I walk a soon-to-be veteran through his transition out of the military over the next year. Join us live as we take this veteran through the transition process and into the civilian sector. Also, these live streams will be archived on the Veteran on the Move YouTube channel to watch if you can't make it for the live airing. Make sure you subscribe to the Veteran on the Move YouTube channel, and you will be notified when we go live with our new project on transition. The top 7 paths to freedom is my free gift to you for listening to the show, featuring 7 great ways for a veteran to take their first step into the exciting world of entrepreneurship. To receive your free gift, go to veteranonthemove.com, or if you're listening on a mobile device, you can text the word veteran to 38470. Marine veteran Michael Penney is the founder and host of the Cigars and Sea Stories podcast. Cigars and Sea Stories provides a place for veterans to act out and speak their minds. Michael also recently took over as the director of The Bunker in Raleigh, Durham, North Carolina. Bunker Labs is a national non-for-profit 501c3 organization built by military veteran entrepreneurs to empower other military veterans as leaders in innovation. All right, we're here with Michael Penney. He's the host of Cigars and Sea Stories and also recently started working with Bunker Labs. So before we get to talking about podcasting and business entrepreneurship, Mike, if you could take us back a little ways and tell us what you did in the Marine Corps.
Sure, absolutely. And it's an honor to be here, let me tell you. This is fantastic. So,
don't get too excited now.
So a little background. I served 8 years in the Marines. I was a sergeant when I left the Corps. First enlistment was out in 29 Palms, where I served with 3rd Battalion 7th Marines Weapons Company. Did 2 combat tours with them, both to Ramadi, Iraq, 05, again in 07. I served as a driver, a vehicle commander, a dismounted patrol leader. I was the high-back driver for a time in 05, which was a crazy experience unto itself. And then re-enlisted overseas, took that fatty bonus with me and wound up going over to Quantico, where I trained officers in combat marksmanship. So, yeah, if you're going through the basic school, 08 to 2010, I was probably one of your CMTs. Or combat marksmanship.
Were you part of the, what they call it, didn't they call it like, not E-Company, but they call it like enlisted company or something like that, where we were one of the guys that were going at it with us when we were out doing the 2-week war, the 9-day war, whatever it is? Or were you just mainly a marksmanship instructor?
No, I was with Weapons Training Battalion.
Okay. So you're primarily a weapons marksmanship instructor?
Correct, yeah.
Okay, great.
Yeah, that was the background over there. I did a lot of OPFOR training, don't get me wrong, but no, unfortunately, I didn't get to go against any of the lieutenants.
Oh, yeah, those guys used to screw with us so bad because they knew the woods like the back of their hand, and they knew exactly where we were going to go and what we were going to do. They had a lot of fun with us.
Oh, yeah, especially along Application Trail, which is, yeah.
Yep, I remember that.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I was the guy waiting at the end of Application Trail with a cup of coffee in hand, ready for you to do snap-in.
Oh, nice.
I was that guy. Yeah.
Great.
It was a great experience in the fact that I learned how to deliver a formal period of instruction through an informal lecture method, ironically enough. But as a CMT, so you have to be a coach. Once you're a combat marksmanship coach, the guys who wear the funny pith hats,
yeah,
which are fantastic helmets, by the way, because the air flows up and around your dome piece, and it's comfy.
Yeah.
So I was a coach on the line for a number of details, requal details, pistol, rifle, and then wound up graduating up into a combat marksmanship trainer to where I could actually deliver the period of instruction, do snap in. I was a range safety officer. all that good stuff. So if it revolved around marksmanship instruction, box ranges, I'm a foreign weapons instructor, a designated marksman. That was kind of the realm that I like toying within. Yeah.
Hey,
good.
you mentioned, and this, I like to point this out a lot of times because a lot of times we take this for granted, having been in the military. I learned to present a formal period of instruction. And at the time that was happening, you were like, well, this is just something I got to do to satisfy a Marine Corps requirement because this is what they need me to do. And you're not really thinking much about it. And then you get out and you're out in the civilian world, and all of a sudden you realize, hey, I can stand up in front of people and talk. I can teach people, and I know exactly what I'm doing, and everybody looking at me thinks I'm doing a really good job here. Why is that? Oh, it's because of what I learned, back in the Marine Corps or whatever it is you did in the military, where you had to stand up and teach people and lead people. And like while you were learning it, when you were in the Marine Corps, you just kind of took it for granted or something that needed to be done. But those are the kind of things that you don't typically get exposed to, right up front or right off the bat. If you're in the civilian sector, a lot of civilian jobs, you never have to stand up in front of people and do that kind of thing. And that's why civilian employers love hiring veterans. And that's also why veterans make great entrepreneurs, because they have a lot of those soft skills. Like, you probably don't put on your resume, I'm excellent at giving a period of instruction, because it's not typically something that goes on a resume. But it's one of those intangibles that makes you desirable for somebody to have you on their team in the civilian sector. I just really wanted to emphasize that point, because it's very important.
Yeah, and I'm glad that you did, because as I was taking stock and ready to leave, Quantico specifically, and I had volunteered for a 3rd Combat Tour, this time as an embedded advisor, and I had gone through a significant transition in my own life at the time, through my personal life, as well as evolving into a better professional, which is really what they're asking of you as a non-commissioned officer, training in that. It's big boy rules. Right, so you knew that it was something that was different or unique in that sense. But to caveat to what you're talking about, I mean, frankly, it's not well publicized, so it's difficult to be able to say, like, no, you don't get it. Banyan Hall, you have tiered auditoriums with LED screens in the back and like a jumbotron, and there's 300 lieutenants that are in front of you. If you mess this up, Sergeant Major is going to reach down your throat and pull your guts out. Like, I don't think you understand. The stakes are extraordinarily high. Right. It's not like, oh, dang, we missed that pitch. Like, no, man, if you screw this up, somebody could die later on down the line. So I definitely understood that we were training. Marksmanship to me is just paramount throughout the Marine Corps, because every Marine a rifleman, sure, but also during the origins in 1775, we were designated marksmen shooting, ship to ship. So you're giving the rudimentary skill set that every Marine needs in order to go downrange and succeed, which I thought was great. That and also you're cognizant of the fact that you're a non-commissioned officer with 50 lieutenants in front of you. That's never going to happen. That won't happen in the fleet. Only at PBS.
Absolutely, and there's probably very few people that have had that kind of an experience where you're. Were you a corporal or a sergeant at the time?
So as a corporal, as a coach, and then in order to be a CMT, you have to be a sergeant.
Mm-hmm.
Can't be a staff, can't be a corporal. You got to be
So you're still fairly junior. You're an NCO at this point, and then maybe eventually a senior NCO. But you're still a pretty young junior kid, and you're standing there in front of 50 lieutenants. So and probably the first couple of times you did it, it was fairly intimidating, like especially with the sergeant major in the background listening. Just wait for you to screw it up. So it definitely teaches you to take something serious, huh?
Absolutely. Well, and when you leave that realm, you understand that it's not the real Marine Corps, right? We think that it is to whatever extent. You're right. Get out to the fleet, see where the actual budget cuts happen, and like, get your gear set, go down range with your guys, see if you can make do or adapt and overcome. It was unique in the sense that I, coming from an infantry background, going back out to the fleet with 1-5, make peace or die. I was put in 81's platoon, and I hadn't touched. I'm originally an 0341, a mortarman by trade, When I got to the fleet, they were like, forget that. You're never going to shoot a mortar in Ramadi, I'll tell you that much. So you might want to learn the art of the trigger. I went back to the fleet, and they stuck me in 81's platoon initially. There were like 9 other sergeants. And I'm like, no, this is not going to happen. So I waited for Sergeant Major. I waited for Sergeant Major by his hatch. And when he walked back in, he was like, Sergeant Penney, I understand you're new here, blah, blah, blah. It was one of those things. How can I help you? And I was like, well, frankly, Sergeant Major, you're employing me wrong. And he's like, what? Or incorrectly. He's like, what do you mean? What do you mean? And I kind of gave him the verbal resume. I'm like, look, I just got done training lieutenants, and I've got all of these high-speed low drag schools, that I went to foreign weapons-wise and stuff like that. I really want to pursue the advisor route. I would like to be an embedded advisor if you have a spot on the team, which they're about to stand everything up. I wound up becoming a section leader for it, which was fantastic. It was a staff NCO's billet, so I felt very confident fulfilling that. And it was a mixed team of sergeants and corporals. So it was all NCOs or petty officers with a variety of different disciplines coming together in order to assess, train, advise, and assist the Afghans. So
wow.
And yeah, 12 of us.
I'm sure that was a great experience too, huh?
Yeah, well, that was the deciding factor that I knew I could be an entrepreneur.
Really? How's that?
Yeah. So it was when we were in advisor school. I'm sure you're well aware of this. I say school not from an academia point, but like you're drinking water from a fire hose, and you've got to do this plus PT plus make sure that all of these other things. It's not linear, right, as far as your training schedule is concerned. That started to build my confidence that I could do more of the paperwork organization things that were going to be called upon me as an executive. When I was downrange, I read a book, Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich.
Oh, yeah.
Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich. So I read that. Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People. There were a number of different texts that I read, like the origins of Ben Franklin and Washington and Jefferson, and some of our other founding fathers that were out there, because I was the kid in school who was always like, hey, Penny, stop looking out the window. Right. and like veterans, you'll also find entrepreneurs in the detention room. And it's not that we don't care. We showed up for class. We just didn't want to pay attention that day. And so when I was downrange, I read these books, and I was doing these different things where it's just kind of, you're alone and unafraid. You have a laptop for developing a lot of curriculum. Even though you're embedded, we were training squad leaders from the artillery battery that were with us, frankly, how to be patrol leaders. 5-paragraph order system, our methodologies, CCPs to the enemy and us within the area. And then you go out and train the Afghans during the day, utilizing an interpreter, all of this different stuff. So how did entrepreneurship come about? I'm basically going in between a supplier and a customer in what I had to do. I had to navigate what the officers were telling me to do as far as a charge. Don't get me wrong. And you know how it is. Commander's intent, desired end state, mission statement, bam.
Mm-hmm.
But it was also like staff NCOs, for instance, weren't running platoons. They were going and doing logistics. The officers were handling what needed to be done as far as coordination, especially with the Arrow, because Kajaki was a crazy place.
Mm-hmm.
So the NCOs were kind of left to our own devices in a positive way. But that really made me mature a great deal in handling. I mean, you know how it is. If you run up to a helicopter and just grab the hook, something as simple as that will kill you.
Yeah, the static discharge.
Exactly. People don't know about that, right? You have to, you got to talk to the red tabs who are up at the LZ before you can coordinate any of this stuff, right? So we had to coordinate with the LZ. That's where he set up a box range. I'm proud to say that we were the only unit at that time in zone who did anything with our Afghans. We did a weapons handling, a live fire training evolution where we actually BZO'd their sights using a collision cost sight adjustment tool. We zeroed their weapon and then qualified them. And not but a couple of weeks later, they went out and just slayed terrorists, which was fantastic. So
Nice.
which is what you want, right? That's what you want.
Yeah.
You're training somebody else in your image. You're infusing some sort of culture. They're getting the skills, knowledge, attitude, a toolkit. They have mentorship that's associated with all of these different things that I use now as an executive leader or as an entrepreneur.
Now, at the time, we had a term for it in the Marine Corps. We called it the strategic corporal. At the time, you were essentially you were becoming a strategic corporal, or you had become one. Did you actually can make the connection that, wow, I'd be a great entrepreneur someday? Or did you figure that out later on after you got out of the Marine Corps and started looking at this entrepreneurship thing?
So I read that book, Think and Grow Rich, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it was like I was sitting in the middle of the 50-yard line and everybody threw on the stadium lights all at once. And I could just, bing! I was like, yes! Yes!
Oh, I love that analogy.
And it was, I'm telling you, it went from complete darkness to bam, now the world is in plain view. And I had a cot, thank God. And I sat on the edge of my cot with some graph paper and I started scribbling away fast and furious, snail mailing stuff home. And by the time I got back, I had a provisional patent on my first product.
No kidding.
So, yeah. So
Holy cow, that's awesome.
I left the Marine Corps May 12th, 2012, and I drove from Pendleton up to Boston to attend school up there. I was going to UMass Boston because they have an awesome venture development center. They have a maker space, all sorts of different stuff up there. So I left the Marine Corps May 12th. May 16th, 4 days later, I needed to drive cross country, move in, get into school. So I went to orientation on day 3, and then day 4 was my first day in class.
Holy cow! And you went to UMass mainly because of the program they had?
So I went to UMass because my wife is from Western Massachusetts. She did enlistment with me. I got to do enlistment with you now. So we went back home for her. She's a nurse. She was a nurse at Children's Hospital in Boston. And the reason why I chose UMass specifically, A, it's a state school. B, the yellow ribbon 9/11 post 9/11 GI Bill, commute. There were all of the different factors. It wasn't so much like, oh, I've been dying to go to Harvard since I was, knee high to a duck. No, not really. I wanted to go and get as much knowledge as I needed to just start a business. I didn't want to go and get a degree. That was not my intention.
Yeah, that's really what happened to me. I mean, I had gotten my first degree years ago, and I was getting towards the end of my Marine Corps career, and I'm like, you know what? I want to go get a degree or I want to go do something, because I was at the schoolhouse at Fort Leavenworth, no duty, no weekends, no deployments. And I'm like, wow, for almost the first time in my career, I've got I can depend on time. And I went and got a degree in entrepreneurship from Oklahoma State, and it was phenomenal. I loved it. I soaked it all up. And I'd take some of the hardcore core classes like finance and accounting and that kind of stuff, but so much of the other stuff was just all of a sudden I was surrounded by other entrepreneurs, and it was great. And I just springboarded from that.
So you just said exactly what I was looking for. I wanted to be surrounded by those other entrepreneurs, but I think this is not a slight to the people that I was with or Boston as a whole, but I don't think that they were prepared for that much crazy. They were like, whoa, this guy is super intense.
They're like, dude, I'm just here to get some school and to scope some girls and stuff, man.
Right. Even my professors, some of my professors were like, Mike, what are you doing here, man? Like, why aren't you out, selling and stuff like that? And I would have to tell my professors how the 9/11 GI Bill worked. I'm like, you don't get it. I'm here on a housing stipend. I'm getting paid to be here.
Yeah.
As oxymoronic as it might sound, I need to make money, so I'll go to school.
I'm getting everything out of it I can.
Right.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, that could probably be a whole nother podcast. There's this guy that writes blog posts. It's called Ranger Goes to College. He was an Army Ranger. It's just all the the weird stuff where he's essentially 4 or 5 years older than all the college kids, and it's just the stupidity. He sees these little snot-nosed kids running around after multiple tours in Iraq, Afghanistan, that kind of thing, and then these veterans show up, and it's like, get out of my way.
Right. Yeah. Well, and it's like the Billy Madison thing. You're just kind of like,
oh yeah, that's funny. I love that movie.
So in going to school, and that's not really where I was pitching my first idea. I'd invested a great deal of money of my own money, got outside investors, brought the product to fruition, and then it failed. We were being sued over the name. We were being sued over pictures that we put on the website, which were frankly, it was in support of a nonprofit. We were very cautious in what we put on our website, and somehow that one image was extraordinarily costly. So all of these different outside factors that frankly I could not have foreseen myself happening started to occur. We had a full-fledged website. Like I said, we came all the way through. This is a hot side injection molded product. This is a metal fabricated tool that needs to be done and plugged in so that you can mass produce these things. Done all the way through. Final marketing, UPC codes, the whole 9 yards, swinging on shelves like we were ready to go. And oh man, it threw me for a loop. It was everything hit us all at once. The investors said, hey, this is not the direction of the company that we wanted to go. We would like a DoD contract rather than legitimizing a commercial sector. And it just crumbled at the seams. And it was one of those where, my God, what the heck am I doing here? And at that time, I had just applied for the Institute of Veterans and Military Families EBV program, the Entrepreneurship Boot Camp for Veterans with Disabilities program. So,
is that at Syracuse?
Yeah, so I attended Syracuse July 2014.
Okay.
Which real proud of it. And that is where I had your OSU experience. That is where I met the other entrepreneurs. That is where I met, as I like to call it, the crazy ones.
Okay.
Yeah.
You finally found your tribe.
Exactly. So in finding them at IVMF, and of course it's fellow ambitious veterans who are self-starters doing their own thing. Right. Like, sweet, I'm out now.
Yep.
You empowered me. Thank you. I'm going to go do this. That's it.
That's awesome.
Right. And so, great group of people.
So you didn't let that failure get you down. I mean, it probably took you down, but you're like, okay, I got to get back up and move on.
See, that's the odd part in this story, because I told you that I went there with a failed company. It's a 45 days correspondence course, 9-day in-house package, and at the end of it, you do a pitch competition.
Okay.
I won the pitch competition.
Awesome.
So I took top honors with a company that had already failed. Right?
You're just a good pitcher.
Right.
That goes back to your great period of instruction you learned in the Marine Corps.
There you go. Now that circles back as far as in the story, because after this, I fell into a deep, dark depression. And everybody that I spoke with, is like, all my investors, all my mentors, they all said, Mike, I will not invest in your company, but I will invest in you. Everybody kept saying that to me. I didn't even know what the heck that meant. And
that's crucial. And any experienced investor, if you pull them aside and say, what are you really investing in? 9 times out of 10, they'll say the same thing. But you don't realize that if you've never been in the pitch game before.
Right. If you've never peeked behind the curtain to kind of understand how these investors, VCs, angels, what have you, work, then you're just oblivious to that fact, right? And So I legitimately went into like a depression. Couldn't get out of bed, all sorts of weird stuff. But I knew, and this has been my life's philosophy since I dealt with an earlier personal crisis, add value. I did a TED Talk on it in March of this year. Add value to every situation that you encounter. I framed it around an IED, of which I've lived through several. You need to add value in those situations. It might just be covering your sector. It might be grabbing a hold of the polis litter. It might be calling for support. But you need to add value. And running around screaming all over the place definitely isn't the way to do it. So, nor is internalizing and just turtling up. Mm-hmm. I went to the EBV National Conference a couple of months after that experience, after that depression, and I said, how can I add value to what you're doing in your mission to every one of my classmates and my extended network through EBV? That's when it turned. That's when I got offered to I've written a patrol leader book on how to be a patrol leader. Hopefully it'll see the light of day. It's difficult dealing with the Marine Corps Exchange. I've done several different things revolving around other people's stuff, so to speak, in order to help out and support their mission. And that's where Bennett Tanton, my fellow Marine over there, who is our co-host on Cigars and Sea Stories, we linked up at that national conference. No joke. We were smoking and joking at about 12:30, 1 o'clock in the morning out at the Olympic Park in Atlanta. And he's like, dude, we should do a podcast. Yeah, like smoking and joking, just hanging out. You know what I mean? Yeah, those lounge moments, or like right behind the hooch, high-fiving after a firefight, you know, or like the bad, like and then I saw her Adam's apple, you know, stories like that, right? You know what I mean?
Because after all, it's those moments, it's those after midnight, there's a cigar and beer's flowing, and it's hilarious and funny, and you hear so much about things you never knew. It's those moments that like often keep us in the military. It's those times that you almost live for more than anything else.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
And yet nobody else ever really gets to experience that unless you happen to just be there when it happens.
Right. Well, and the other thing that our show that I love telling civilians about is they get to act as a wallflower while we speak candidly in our terms, our lingo. We don't dumb it down or water it down, so to speak. You know, it's a sea story.
Yeah.
You know, like LT grabbed the Frago, went hightailing out of the COC to the Clearing Barrels Con 1, guns up, we're rolling, going through, bank right at 295 South on Sunset. Do you remember that place? Retard Road? Where we just blew the hell out of that. Yes. Those are the stories, that type of stuff, because it's us reminiscing sometimes. If we have some of our buddies on, it's also, hey, yeah, I chewed the same dirt here. Or, oh, weird story. Yeah, I was thrown off the third deck, sandwiched between two mattresses also. Hey, you know,
did you ever like be chatting up one of those stories and then like have somebody contact you because they heard the podcast and you're like, hey, you know, I was there, or I was part of that, or I was the guy going the other direction when that happened. You ever have anybody do that? I'm just curious, because you would think that at some point you'd have somebody, you basically telling someone else's story, or somebody else comes along and they were part of the story you were telling. Has that ever happened?
It's happened a couple of times.
That's cool.
And and when it does, two things happen in your head. One is, as the host of that show, you're like, bing, mission accomplished.
Yep.
Yes. Like, you are engaging with me in a very positive way, and I love that. Two is, oh dear God, please tell me that I didn't say something wrong. Right? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, that's
you didn't see it in a different way, did you?
Right, exactly. So, one of my favorite people in the world, who's actually on a cross country vacation, so to speak, Wade Spann, and you can find him on Facebook, which his group is Span Across America. I love him. Every picture has a pun, right? And it's so good. So Wade Spann is a fellow Marine who served with I believe it was 1.5 or 2.5. Oh God, he'll punch me for saying that.
I know him or know of him somehow. I don't know. I'm not sure yet, but I'll figure it out.
Nice.
Keep going.
Yeah, hopefully in a positive way. Yeah, he was in Ramadi. He was in Ramadi right before us in 2005, and I had shared a sea story about how during our RIP, or shortly before our RIP, there was a friendly KIA from the unit prior, and the story stuck with me and haunted me to whatever extent. It was one of those that kept you alive while you're on patrol.
Mm-hmm.
You're like, oh shit, because it was. I don't know if you ever saw this happen, but we used to sympathetically detonate munitions, right? So we would shoot, Sassers with Rothus rounds at an IED. It would blow up. We would shoot like Mark 19s at an IED. It'd blow up. So he was doing that. He shot his Mark 19 at an IED. It blew up, and it wound up fragging him, killing him. And it snuck in between the turret and the roof, right where the armor isn't. Yeah. Isn't there. In the gap, so to speak. Mind the gap.
Yeah.
And, So it turned out that Wade knew him and called me up, or rather text messaged me saying, Andy's also an EBV graduate.
Oh, really?
So yeah, he sent me a Facebook message. Hey man, what's up? Heard your podcast. I knew him. Want to come on and talk about that? Maybe a few other things potentially. So yeah, and it's always, yeah, we've actually had somebody call us up before and say, I was going to kill myself. And then I saw you guys, or a bunch of knuckleheads or whatever, when we were in the unit together.
Wow. Well, that's
and I didn't
mission
know
accomplishment right
that.
there.
Yeah. Yeah, that was actually the very first road trip that we took as a Cigars and Sea Stories crew. Like, we make it a point to go around to our buddies' establishments. So there are a couple of nonprofits that we saw, other meetings that we wanted to make, and then we record with them in their location, which is a little novel. We have the ability to do that through our microphone setup, being that they're instrumental mics and the way that we do it with ambient. So, yeah, we were on our first road trip, and he saw what we were doing on Facebook and decided to put his pistol down, which was nice.
Holy cow.
Yeah.
Right.
Still with us, doing awesome stuff.
Powerful, man. Powerful. We could talk about all that for hours, and I'd be just fine with it. But I do want to touch on, because you just started being involved in Bunker Labs, right? Can you give us a quick rundown on what that is? Because I want you to put it out there for everybody that's listening, because there's a lot of guys that are still in the military and they've got this entrepreneurship bug and they don't really know where to go or how to get started. What can Bunker Labs do for them?
Sure. So, in short, Bunker Labs is a veteran-focused business accelerator. It's to catalyze that experience that you gained and then propel off into the future. More buzzwords: inspire, educate, connect. Now, how did I get turned on to Bunker Labs? We originally saw what Bunker was doing out of their headquarters in Chicago. And at the time, they had 10 locations across the U.S. I went into Bunker Labs RDU, which would be the 11th, met with Dean Bunchu, the executive director over there, invited him on Cigars and Sea Stories, recorded with him, and then he invited me in as a cohort member. So our company was one of the company cohorts within the initial launching of Bunker RDU. And at that time, I kind of put my toes to the edge and thought about doing TEDx Raleigh as I saw it come across the radar. And a great lady, Alicia Ramsey, who's a fellow veteran, she was with Signal Corps in the Army and is now doing a talk show. She was like, you got to do this. You just wham, you've got to do it. Just shove you from behind, right? Like that guy at swim qual, 40 inches back to front, walk out, right? That's always what I think of whenever I think, which it never scared me. That was one of the funnest things that I did in the Marine Corps, at least from my own personal experience. So that's what I think of
like,
whenever I
hold
think
on a second. Okay, right. And then it's too late.
Right. Look down, look up, right? Look down, look straight, 40-inch step, bam, cross your legs all the way down. And you get a little nervous, but you get a little rush of excitement as you're climbing up that ladder. You're sopping wet with your combat boots and your full camis, and I don't think you have a Kevlar on, and you're climbing all the way up to the top of this thing. Stuff's weighing you down, dragging you. The anticipation of, oh my God, I'm like 30 feet above the water or whatever. But then when you actually do it and you land, and the exhilaration of it, that's actually where I go when I think about a lot of these different trials that we encounter. And so anyway, TEDx very much so was that for me. I've got a lighting set that I bought for $100 on Amazon. I used a webcam, the Logitech webcam that I've had for years, and did my darndest I recorded on Microsoft Media Player and did my darndest to get one take that was 2 minutes long. So it would be one elevator pitch, essentially, on my idea we're spreading. It took me like 45 takes to do that, whatever. So people always ask me, hey, Mike, how'd you get a TED Talk? That's how.
And you had to do it 45 times to finally get it perfect.
For my standards, yeah. I mean,
it's good to know, because sometimes people need to know that number. Like I try to convey that. We got like 4 teenagers, and I try to convey that to the kids sometimes. They're like, you have no idea how many times you do it wrong before you finally get that right one. and then all you're seeing is the right one, and you think, wow, I'm so far off from that, I could never be that way. No, it's not the case. He did it 45 times before he finally got it right.
Right.
It's real simple stuff, It's and I think that's the thing as veterans. How many times were you off in an obscure location practicing your period of instruction by yourself in the dark, just so you could get your words finessed and everything,
Well, and that was the thing also is, so I wound up going through the interview process, got the TED Talk. They announced that I was a presenter, which was, I think that they invited about 50 people out to this bar. It was 510 Glenwood in Raleigh, which is a great place. And they announced my name, and I think it shocked me more than anybody else. I had a fellow Marine, Nick Bradfield, who I've had on Cigars and Sea Stories, fellow veteranpreneur. He was shooting video at the time, like, "Ora" in the background, fellow 03, right? Like, "Oh,
0300 infantry, you made it."
Exactly. I think we were the only two wearing a suit and tie in that place, by the way. I don't know
the
why.
irony of that too.
Right. So, then when that happened, they were like, "Don't give a period of instruction and don't be moving in place." That was the first thing that they told us in the initial briefing. I'm like, oh my God, that's all that I do. I give a period of instruction, and I fill that whole room with energy. You don't get I'll give you. Don't get me wrong. Socratic method. The whole, I'll give you the good cookie and all of this other stuff when you answer questions right. No, that's Mike Penney's. I'm doing that. Like, who's filling that room? That's me. And now they want me to be anchored at a dot and poised. Right? I've got the politician fist with the thumb.
Yeah.
Right now I'm making a point, Joe. I am right? You know what I mean? So,
oh my,
Mike Penney doesn't do that very well. So anyway, it was way outside of my comfort base. However, it was well within my strength suit,
Yeah.
And it was, I won't lie to you, it was a lot of it was wearing nothing but my wedding ring and tattoos in front of the mirror. Because if I can do it stark naked in the bathroom, then I can definitely do it come game day. Which you don't think. Also, a lot of people are worried about the audience. Nope, not worried about the audience. Worried whether or not the video at the end is going to look good. That was the more nerve-wracking experience, which Rob Underhill did a fantastic job.
Because the audience is a few hundred people. The video that goes on TED is millions, potentially.
Right, and that's the other thing, too, is I'm one of those guys where it's quality, not quantity. You're going to find that out. I've got a network that's, I like to think, extraordinarily supportive. I won't use the word powerful, but they're powerful in supporting a fellow mission, right? Such as artillery. Artillery is extraordinarily powerful when they are on call and on target.
The king of battle.
Right. There you go. So the point is, you might not see the views that you would really want as far as numbers. Like, I don't have 1 million views in my TED Talk, whoop-de-doo. People in important roles throughout our society have seen it, and that's what matters.
Absolutely.
So in doing this, that's what ties into Bunker Labs.
Okay, I was just about to ask. Okay, weren't you supposed to be answering the Bunker Labs question?
Well, because right, exactly.
So this was all intentional. You're now gonna. You're circling back. Okay, cool.
The whole, I know my brain's fantastical. So which is not a word. Why do I use the TED Talk? Because I was in the class and I was helping all of my fellow cohort members and doing all of this other stuff and looking to leverage the brand. What I love about Bunker Labs is that while we were in there, we checked our egos at the door, dropped everything, said, "Dude, I am hurting. Hey, you could do this better." And it turned into a team room instead of a classroom. It turned into we are working together, going through this tight-knit. It turned back into a school that you would go through in the military, right? That feel
Great.
That it's you're each a little special, and you're all coming from your own individual special unit. and you're doing this because you're crazy passionate about it, super ambitious, and you really want to be there in that room. And those are the people that I found, not only through Bunker Labs, but through TED and all of these other different things. So Dean Bunchu, who will tell you hands down, the first time that he ever met me, he was like, I thought Mike was clinically insane and I needed to get away from him. And then he offered me a job. So he tells that story way better than I do. So, so it was weird because I did the TED Talk while I was going through the cohort as a cohort member, and I experienced what I did not expect. I thought other people would be jealous. I didn't think other people would be jealous because my head was big or an egocentric thing. It's just, that's the way that I perceived it, and I looked to be very humble in that regard, right? It was the exact opposite. Everybody was entirely supportive. How can we help each other out? Great job on that. How can we spread it on social media? All of these other different things. I saw that. I saw what was going on as the program. I, with my instructor background and the public speaking and engagement, the business development background. I've got a small sales background as well, all cued into the duties and responsibilities, so to speak, pertaining to the role of programs director, programs manager, programs guy. I usually just call myself the programs guy.
Programs guy.
Programs guy. I think it's programs manager somewhere. It says director on my business card. It says programs director somewhere. It doesn't matter on the programs. So that's the other thing that you figure out with entrepreneurship. Titles don't mean a damn. The only thing that matters is whether or not you can actually perform. So, which I love. And yeah, in working with Bunker Labs, it's been great because over this past summer, I'm excited to say we planned and just did our massive event. It's basically like our Super Bowl in Bunker terminology. It's the Bunker Muster. And that was at MetLife's GTO Center right off Weston Drive in Cary, North Carolina. But big sponsors, JP Morgan was there, North Carolina Support Center. And I'm proud of saying that I helped in a huge regard putting together the workshops and the panelists. And then the pitch competition was my baby, which I can take responsibility for now because it was a success.
Success has 1,000 fathers.
Right, exactly. Well, and it takes a village to raise a child, but then again, every village has an idiot, so you don't want to be that one. And so the thing is it really opened doors, this muster experience, which is very recent. It was only two weeks ago. It opened yet another set of opportunities, right? It never stops. You don't grab one brass ring in life. You know, it never stops. You're continually working on yourself within the entrepreneurial discipline, which is a lot like being, I equate it to being a Marine. I equate it to being a samurai, not to being like a ninja. You know, samurai constantly are sharpening themselves, and preparing their weapon, gear, body, so on and so forth, as far as getting ready for going out into battle. But they're very much so upfront about it. I equate it to the hunter-killer aspect. I am an avid hunter. I do it respectfully. I do it for meat because I enjoy that. I process my own food. Maybe that's weird, I guess, but my grandfather taught me how to butcher, so that's what I do.
Rock on.
So, which is a trade, right? I mean, it's a blessing unto itself. So the reason why I say these things is because I'm very much so internally focused on how can I improve myself in order to make the value which I inject, that which I add, that much greater. The quality of the value that I add, that much greater. And I mean, don't let me blow smoke. There are some personal things that I deal with, which don't take away from the mission overall, but there are things that I need to deal with in my personal life, as anybody needs to deal with in their personal life.
Oh, yeah.
So that way they can be productive in the professional sense and ultimately, be profitable. Because we're talking about entrepreneurship here. You've got to be able to clean up your own house first before you're going to be doing any good for anyone else. So that's what led me down the Bunker Labs thing and my philosophy as the programs guy, bringing it to the North Carolina stage, so to speak, of Bunker Labs, or AO of Bunker Labs.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Well, hey, Michael, we've already gone over our time, man. I don't even want to cut you off because it's all good stuff, but I actually have to do another interview here shortly, so that's really the only reason we got to end it for now, man. But so do a shout out for your podcast and Bunker Labs also, and then finish it up real quick if you could with if you're talking to that guy that's still in getting ready to transition, or maybe in the middle of the transition, or maybe somebody that already transitioned that didn't really like where they landed, and they're really looking at entrepreneurship, what kind of advice would you have for them?
Okay. All right, so let me give you your 2 links first. I usually only give one. Ooh, I'm going to break a golden rule. All right, so for the podcast, it's
I'll put them in the show notes too, so but yeah, obviously tell us what they are.
Wonderful. Okay, so for the listeners, cigarsandseastories.com/podcast. Again, that's cigarsandseastories.com/podcast. If you're interested in Bunker Labs RDU especially, you can check out bunkerlabsrdu.org. If you are looking to get involved, it's bunkerlabsrdu.org/get-in-the-fight. Again, that's bunkerlabsrdu.org/get-in-the-fight.
I love that because I put out a blog post a few months ago called "Get in the Fight," and it's exactly that, about you can't stand on the sidelines of entrepreneurship and wonder why you're not successful. So that's cool that they're using that.
Oh no, that was me that came up with that. That's what happens.
Oh yeah, I'm
when
sure.
You get a guy.
Yeah, you get a couple of Marines, and it's like, yep. Yeah, that's an awesome, and it's an awesome analogy. I mean, it's exactly what it is. You can't just stand on the sidelines. You got to get in the fight, and it's probably not going to, like what happened to you. It's probably not going to come off very good the first couple of times, but if you keep at it, eventually you'll figure it out.
Right. Well, and that's a great lead in, as well as getting the fight itself. For that piece of advice that I would have for any veteran in any stage, if you're like, hey man, I'm thinking about entrepreneurship, there are resources. We have Bunker in a Box. That's an online resource. I like it because it's got a little Mark 19 ammo can on there for a logo. But go for it. Do Bunker in a Box. Kick the tires. See whether or not you want to be a part of this. The EPIC program is for the JV level, so to speak. Yes, I'm an entrepreneur. I want to grow this idea into an actual product, and I want to get to market, make traction, maybe even break even. Yeah. That is EPIC, right? And then the Entrepreneur in Residence. So the Entrepreneur in Residence package is the 12-week package with all of the resources and what have you. That's for us who are entrepreneurs. We're doing it. We're here. We're pushing. We're trying like mad, like crazy. There's a spot for you. What I would like to emphasize is that every single veteran has a home at Bunker Labs. I will say that to say this, though. We don't do employment. We don't do job placement. We typically don't do, hey, we're going to have a wounded warrior thing. We just don't do that. This is for ambitious veterans who would like to go downrange with highly ambitious, highly motivated, and want to go out there, build teams. If you're a veteran, let's say, for instance, who wants to build or be on one of these teams and be engaged, but you're not necessarily an entrepreneur, that there are 8 times more veterans, right? It's an 8-to-1 ratio is what I'm saying. There's one founder, essentially, of the company, and then what we've seen is 8 other individuals will come into what might be the founding team members of the overall organization. So it starts with one idea coming in, but then you go and find all of the other people who are crazy enough to go with you on that mission. Well, you got to get outside the building and come see us. That's how it works.
All right, Michael. Man, it's good stuff. We should have made we should have had like part 1, 2, 3, and 4 of this. So maybe we can have you back here and go into some more detail about those specific bunker programs if you'd like. That'd be awesome. And because basically you just said the name and quick, but I'd like to hear more about them. And I've heard good things about the bunker so far, and had a couple members of the bunker on a while back, but I think they've grown and really fine-tuned their product over the last year or so, so I would like to look into that some more. So anyways, hey, these two Marines got to get out of here. I got another interview, and I'm sure you got some dragons to go slay or something, right?
You know it.
All right, Michael. Well,
yeah, brother.
All right, man. These two Marines are Oscar Mike. We're out.
Yep.
As you can tell from listening to the Veteran on the Move podcast, interviews are a great way to tell your story and spread the word about your business. If you would like to get booked as a podcast guest, I recommend Interview Valet. You can check out Interview Valet at veteranonthemove.com/valet. Be sure to check out Thrive15.com, the world's premier online education platform that helps entrepreneurs, aspiring entrepreneurs, and intrapreneurs learn how to start or grow a successful business. Start your free 30-day membership by going to Thrive15.com and use the promo code VETERAN. Thank you for listening to Veteran on the Move, your pathfinder to freedom. If you like the show, leave us a review on iTunes. Reviews are always greatly appreciated. So until next time, this veteran is Oscar Mike.